Hi, Larry K, ShadowAnyone.com. Today I want to talk about one of the hardest things about being a private investigator, and that is that if someone wrongs you, you always know who it was. It's just one of those things that no matter what happens in your life or in the in the life of someone you love, someone you care about, you know who did it. You know, no matter how sneaky they tried to be, you have the resources to very quickly find out or figure out who did it. And I'm talking about, a neighbor calls about someone's grass not being cut. They call the city and complain. Well, as a private investigator, you can find out in 5 or 10 minutes who made that call, no matter how sneaky they tried to be. And I'm going to give you a little more dangerous of an example here as well. One time, my partner and I were working, and this is back when I was working loss prevention, and we made an apprehension. And for whatever reason this had been, the guy was particularly nasty, or whatever the problem was, we had to call the cops, and we actually had to go downtown and file on him right then. And I don't recall the details, but not a pleasant person, not a nice guy. And the cruiser is up next to the store. My partner's going to go down and file on him. And despite the fact that I had specifically trained him not to do this type of thing, he brought his privately owned vehicle around, parked it in the curb behind a police car while the bad guy was in the backseat of the car, and then followed the police car down. Normally what we would do is we would let the cop car go, then we'd get into our private vehicle and meet them down there. The guy, we processed him and everything, and I forget if it was a day or two later, but he got out of jail right away, of course, and came back and just keyed the snot out of my buddy's car. And he really liked this car. This is, a young man, 20-something, really has a lot of his life tied up in his car, and he's a good guy. But that was rough, and here's somebody, my partner who I really care about, and he got done wrong. And it didn't take much effort at all on my part to track down this guy. And you might say, well, yeah, you know everything about him because you made the apprehension, but you're still having to deal with bogus addresses and things like this. But very quickly, I was able to find this guy, and I go out to the apartment complex. It's the middle of the night, 1:30 in the morning, something like that. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking across the parking lot at the bad guy's car. And hey, live by the sword, die by the sword, my friend. You think it's going to be, you can just go around doing what you want to do to people? It doesn't work that way. Now, how are you going to like it on the other end of it? But I sat there, and it was right within reach, and I didn't want to be that kind of guy. And this was earlier on when I was still on the fence about these things in a large sense, long before do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing. But I decided this is not how I wanted to live. I did not want to be like that guy. And, I live by the sword, die by the sword myself. And I did the right thing. I backed away and drove off and, never looked back. It was not a big deal. And here I am just years later, and I feel great about it. It was a very good moment that I recall every now and then. That I chose the right thing, and I feel better for it rather than descending to that level. And one of the hardest things as a private investigator is when someone does you wrong, you're going to know who it was, and you have to be the bigger person. You have to forgive them. You have to let it go. And there's a lot. It doesn't mean we're not talking about justice. It doesn't mean that you don't still pursue charges of vandalism, that you don't try to recuperate the loss of repainting your car. You do all of those things, but you still have to do the right thing. You still have to be the good guy. This is Larry K, ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing.